Hello and welcome to The Cat Who Project, a podcast where we take a deep dive into Lillian Jackson Braun's world of Quill and Coco. Today we are looking at the settings and places that Lillian Jackson Braun created for her first novel, The Cat Who Could Read Backwards. I think the settings are really key in the Cat Who novels, and I have certainly chosen a Cat Who book to reread based on where the story is set. You know, the apple barn in the summery weather, or the coziness of Quill's Indian village apartment and the thrill of waiting for the big one to arrive. So with that in mind, I really wanted to consider some of the settings of this first book and how they contribute to Quill's character and the story itself. In this first book, Quill is finding his feet again as a journalist, and the settings associated with his profession, the newsroom and the press club, are where Quill feels most comfortable. The press club is introduced early in chapter 1 when Arch and Quill head over to the press club for lunch. The Daily Flux Press Club is right across the street from the new police station, in a sooty limestone fortress with barred windows that had once been a county jail. It's described as having stone steps that had become bowl-shaped with age and held the evidence of an unseasonable February thaw. Inside the lobby, the ancient woodwork gleamed red under countless coats of varnish. It sounds so cosy and warm, doesn't it? The press club is really important to Quill and is shown in this lovely line. Once upon a time, press clubs had been his life, his love, his hobby, his home, his inspiration. It's also a place where he meets to discuss important stories and leads, and this is described in this line. It was dim and noisy in the bar. Conversation was high-key with confidential undertones. Quillen knew it meant that rumours were being circulated, campaigns were being launched, and cases were being solved, unofficially, over a beer and a hamburger. The other place that is a comfort to Quill is the newsroom, although there are some aspects to this particular newsroom that jar Quill somewhat. He can hear the sounds of the newsroom from the waiting room, and they all sound just right. The typewriters clattering, teletypes jigging, telephones screaming. But he is appalled when he actually goes in and sees the neat and tidy room with the straight blinds, and the rubbish is in the actual bin and not scattered all over the floor. That's what he's used to. So these two places are a comfort to Quill in the story, but what makes him uncomfortable? Quill's temporary lodgings, the Plastic Palace, is definitely one of those. It's described as an old, inexpensive hotel that had replaced its worn rugs and faded velvets with plastic floors and plastic-covered armchairs. You can really sense the utter loneliness of the place. It's really quite sad, really, when Quill only had that option. But later on in the novel, Montclemens invites Quill to move into his spare downstairs apartment, and this place is the polar opposite of the Plastic Palace. It's described as homey with comfortable chairs and gas logs in the fireplace. There is a less successful Monet over the fireplace, and Quill's only complaint is the dim lighting. Through this change in residence, we see a change in Quill. He is settling into his new city and his new art beat. He has the company of the sometimes irritating landlord, Montclemens, and he finds a true companion in Coco the cat, comfort and company. Montclemens' house sounds amazing, and it really sets Montclemens up as the isolated character that he is. He's an art critic, and he says himself that, "I am somewhat of a recluse. A critic cannot afford to mix with artists." And to reflect this, his home is in an old part of town where the neighbourhood is run down and a bit dodgy. But amongst this is 26 Blenheim Place, and is described as proud and plucky with a respectable residential air. And as Montclemens separates himself from his peers, his house is separated from its neighbours by an ornamental iron fence. I think it's also worthwhile mentioning the inside of Montclemens' house. Not really the decor, because that was covered in the Montclemens episode, but the layout of the house. It has 3 apartments, one that is occupied by Montclemens himself and the other by Quill. But there is a hidden third apartment where Montclemens and Narks created the Scrano paintings. And there are also hidden cupboards where Montclemens stores all his collection of art. So the house is complex and has lots of hidden secrets, much like Montclemens himself. There are some fun places in the book, and one of those is the Turp and Chisel, and this is where the Valentine's Ball is held. It's the top floor of the very best hotel. Membership is large and it is the fashionable place to be. It has a sumptuous lounge, dining room, games room, a very busy bar, and the ballroom. It's here at the Valentine's Ball where Quill starts getting to know his new beat and the big players in the art scene. Another gathering place in the book is the Artist and Model. It's a snug cellar hideaway apparently favoured by the cultured crowd. The background music is classic and the cuisine is French. The walls are hung with art, but they are unviewable given the cultivated gloominess of the basement. I wonder if the gloominess is perceived only because Quill himself was feeling gloomy the night he went to the Artist and Model. There's a passage that reads, "It was an atmosphere of conversation and hand-holding. Quill allowed himself a moment of self-pity when he realised he was the only one dining alone." So I think perhaps that instead of being gloomy, the atmosphere might have felt cosy and intimate if you were in a different frame of mind. Now, where were the locations of the murders? The Lambeth Gallery is the site of the first murder. The gallery is on the edge of the financial district and is in an old loft building that is dwarfed by nearby office towers. So it kind of sounds like it's a really nice looking building surrounded by ugly modern buildings. The gallery is classy, of modern design, is long and narrow and furnished like a living room. The second murder, that actually turns out not to be a murder, was of Nino at The Happening. The Happening took place at the Penniman School of Fine Art in a barn that is dark except for a number of spotlights that played on the walls. The barn is a maze of cardboard towers and scaffolding. There are sharp items dangling precariously from the ceiling, and the room is packed with people, sights, sounds, and smells. The barn also has a very hard concrete floor that is the fatal landing spot of Nino when he falls from the scaffolding. The Penniman School is also the place of Butchie Bolton's welding studio. The studio apparently looks mean. This passage. It bristled with sharp edges and thorny points of metal sculpture. Whether the pieces were finished or unfinished, Quill could not tell. Everything seemed designed to puncture flesh and tear clothes. And of course, Butchie herself is kind of rough and gruff around the edges, so this setting really does reflect her personality. So we can circle back to junk sculptor Nino. His place sounds terrible, but also kind of amazing. He has a studio home in an alley garage and is described as dismal. The building is coated with grease. There are old tyres and broken glass, chunks of uprooted concrete sidewalk, tin cans and dispossessed doors and windows. There are also some creepy things to complete the scene: baby carriage with missing wheels and a store mannequin with no head or arms. Up above is a heater that is belching out warm fumes. Quill finds Nino fixing the wheels of the baby carriage to a monster's head. The passage continues. Nino gave the wheels a twirl and stood back, and the spinning spokes, glinting under the spotlight, became malevolent eyes. As you can imagine, Quill could not wait to get out of that place. The fumes from the heater had made his head throb. He made a dash for fresh air. Well, that's it for this episode of the Cat Who Project. Thank you for listening, Cat Who friends, and I'll see you in the final wrap-up episode next time for the Cat Who Could Read Backwards. Bye now.